This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
It's going to WrestleMania. Claymore! Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass.
This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
All right, everybody, welcome to the current state of WWE. We've got Anthony DeMarco back with us, as always, every week. And tonight, today or this morning, whenever you're listening to this, we've got a bit of a non-wrestling related topic that we're going to focus pretty heavily on, and that is the return of Vincent Kennedy McMahon to WWE, self-appointing himself to the board of directors. Anthony, welcome to the show, and I'm ready for this one.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. Not even 7 months later, and we're already talking about Vince spearheading his way back into the WWE head office. And I know a lot of people are saying that he's only coming back to oversee a potential sale and media rights and all that. But like, if we know Vince McMahon and the power-hungry, I guess, phenomenon that he is, I can't imagine it's going to stop there.
No, it's not. And from what I'm hearing, and I've heard this from other podcasts that are much larger than ours, and I'll give credit where credit's due. I mean, I love The Torch and Wade Keller, and he's got sources within WWE that I have heard him say that this is going to be a story that's going to be going on for a couple of months. It's not going to just be overnight and boom, whatever is going to happen happens and it's done. This is going to be apparently a story that evolves and takes crazy twists and turns over the next couple of months. So that's what I've heard from Wade Keller, who has sources inside WWE, and I trust, their reporting. So with that said, I mean, the latest as of January 9th, 2023, is that not only has he self-appointed himself to the board of directors and that he's trying to oversee a sale, and what those motivations for overseeing a sale are, whether it's ego to say, hey, see, I'm here to, facilitate the biggest move of my career and try to take credit for the sale or whatever it may be. But beyond that, to me, the more crazy thing that you just alluded to before we hit record and the more concerning thing is not even the sale or Vince even being on the board of directors. It's the creative control that he's trying to reportedly get back. And, I'll let you speak on that.
I mean, it's so predictable in a lot of ways, but sad at the same time, because you kind of wanted to give the benefit of the doubt that he was just going to let things be the way they are, let the chips fall where they may, and just kind of let Triple H and this new regime guide WWE into the next generation. And for whatever reason, Vince McMahon just can't stay home. He has to be in the driver's seat in the company that he created. And it's almost like if he can't run it, he's going to destroy it. And that seems like what he's doing right now, because like you said, he was able to appoint himself back onto the board of directors. He was able to appoint two yes people in the two former presidents onto the board of directors. He's still the majority shareholder, so he could still pretty much do anything he wants in terms of WWE. And who's to say he's just going to stop at a potential sale? Maybe he has things lined up in the back door or whatever with companies that want to buy. And the whole deal is that he'll make sure that sale goes through as long as he can take back creative. And it's just getting to a sad point. And I never like to talk about anyone's potential death because it's just so morbid and sad and whatever. But it's gotten to a point now where I'm saying, like, until he dies, I don't know if we will ever be rid of Vince McMahon.
There's unfortunately no other conclusion when Vince will finally be hands off of WWE until he's in the grave. I mean, that's just a fact. I don't think it's morbid to say that, because we all know the passion that Vince has for this, and I appreciate that. I understand it, but I also feel like he should understand when to step aside and realize that the general feeling among fans and shareholders and stakeholders is that, hey, this product has been better since he left. Not perfect, certainly not perfect. There's been a lot of flaws, but generally the morale has improved backstage. The creative has generally been better returns and all that kind of thing, and you get to see what WWE looks like when it's not under the creative mind of Vince, and that's what's so exciting. It feels like a product outside of Raw, SmackDown specifically feels like a product that is almost like anything could happen. That's the feeling they try to give you, and that's what the product generally feels like now. And under Vince, it just doesn't. And I'm not unappreciative for what he's done for the business. Hell, we're all here because of Vince McMahon. But you have to know when to step aside and not mingle in something that's not broken. He's trying to fix something that's not broken, whether it's to feed his own ego or whatever the case may be. But to be fair, the stock did jump. I looked. It jumped like $20 per share the day that it was announced he was coming back to WWE. So to say that shareholders aren't excited about a potential return, now they're not necessarily fans. You don't have to be a fan of the WWE to be a shareholder. All it requires is money. But it appears that shareholders specifically, have confidence in Vince to oversee a potential sale that could send WWE stock through the roof. So even though fans that aren't generally shareholders are not excited about a Vince return because the fact that creative is doing so well, the shareholders are giving a different message because they're looking at this from a monetary perspective. If NBC or Disney were to purchase WWE, or some Comcast, whoever will purchase WWE, I think they are looking at it through the lens of, we could make a ton of money. I want to get in now and buy shares of WWE. So I think there's conflicting messages here.
You see, I agree. Because what are we supposed to expect from Vince McMahon now? Like, what was it that even prompted a potential sale? Like, had you heard anything about this before Vince McMahon came back, about a potential sale of the company?
Yeah. I mean, I remember last year, before any of the Vince scandal came out, that there was talk of WWE with the reason. Remember all the layoffs that took place? I mean, like like feels like hundreds of people were let go in April of 21, I think it was. They just like, how many people were let go? That was during the Braun Strowman release and the Bray Wyatt release, and like all those two that headlined it. And of course, Luke Harper at the time was let go, and he went to AEW. Like, there was so many people that were let go by Vince that people were speculating they are trying to clean up their balance sheets to position the company in the best possible light for a buyer to come in.
Yeah, you're right.
So when that was the speculation. So this has been going on for quite a while, but now it appears that things are ramping up very quickly with Vince coming back to the board to oversee a sale.
Well, I heard something so twisted on Jim Cornette's show. I wasn't sure if it was the Experience or the Drive-Thru. I know he has both. But he and his co-host were talking about, what if, given their relationship over the last 5, 6, 7 years, Vince has set up a backdoor deal with the Saudis to buy WWE, and then they're going to put Vince in charge. Like, would there be a worse outcome for WWE than that?
I guess it depends who you ask, honestly. For casual fans, well, I guess we're hardcore fans and we're doing a podcast. But for general fans of the product, I think we wouldn't be happy with this, because most fans, I do feel like the Triple H regime, the Paul Levesque and Stephanie McMahon era, that has truly been a nice, refreshing feel to the product. Things feel so much different and better and unique and all that. I think for fans, we'd be pissed. But I think from a shareholder perspective, if I had a ton of money invested in WWE, say I had like 10,000 shares at $80 a share, whatever it may be, and I hear that Saudi Arabia, who they have just godly amounts of money, are purchasing WWE, and I only cared about the money end of things, I'd be excited about this, because I'm looking at putting money in my pocket, a boatload of money in my pocket, if Saudi Arabia was to do this. Now, again, from a fan's perspective, we'd be like, what the hell? This is so backhanded. This is sneaky. This is, here we go. Vince McMahon, back to the Vince McMahon era, back to Vince's creative. Here we go. So I think it depends on who you ask. So, I mean, from your and I's perspective, though, and most of the people that are listening to this that are just general fans and not shareholders, yeah, that would be, to me, just a kind of a slimy thing to do, honestly. And I don't think that it would be good for morale at all in WWE, from management down to the wrestlers themselves.
Well, the way I think about it is, I think for the most part, creative has made some pretty good strides and improvements under Triple H. Look, we talked about it last week, how Raw is still borderline unwatchable, but SmackDown is much watched television. I think that Triple H has done a good job in recognizing when something needs to be changed, i.e. Hit Row turning heel this past Friday night. Mm-hmm. Like, I think if they would not have turned heel, they were barreling towards a potential release. So I think there have been many positive signs that Triple H has brought in. I feel like every pay-per-view is treated as such. Like under Vince, there were so many pay-per-views that I felt could have just been a Monday Night Raw. And I wonder, or I would say rather, I fear that we're just going to go back, and not even just go back a bit, but just fall back like 20 steps. And what's unfortunate to me, and I'm not going to talk about Vince McMahon, the businessman or the person, because I can't speak to that, right? Like, I don't know him personally. I don't know the first thing about the executive world in any stretch. But as a character, and you could attest this more to me because you grew up right in the smack dab of the Attitude Era. Me, it was more Ruthless Aggression with the tail end of the Attitude. But even in the Ruthless Aggression, Vince was arguably the best heel character that WWE had on screen. An amazing on-screen character. A guy that would willingly get his ass kicked and busted open and thrown off cages and his coccyx broken and all that for the betterment of the product and the betterment of the entertainment he was giving to his consumers. And I'm saying to myself is that the last, I guess, 3 years or so, and especially the last 12 months, he is tarnishing his on-screen reputation. I know that maybe on a personal and a business level, he's never had the greatest reputation, but obviously as a fan, I can't speak to that. I've never met him, like I just said. But I'm just saying, like, for me, I'm looking back on him in such a negative way that, like, I'll watch an old clip from, let's say, 2001, and I look at him in such a different vein now as I did 5 years ago. Do you feel that at all as well?
Yeah, I mean, well, certainly he's not the Vince McMahon of 20 years ago and Ruthless Aggression and Attitude that, as you mentioned, and I would actually go as far as to say that Vince McMahon may be the biggest heel in professional wrestling ever. I mean, like, there's an argument to be made. I'm not saying it's, an objective fact, but there's an argument to be made that nobody in professional wrestling was at that time in the late 90s, early 2000s hated as much as Vince McMahon was. Of course, he had Stone Cold that opposed him in a perfect balance in one of the best storylines ever, and the hottest storyline, the one that made the most money ever in WWE. So there's an argument to be made there, and you're right. Yeah, I mean, how many bumps he's taken. I mean, he's, bladed himself how many times and, as you said, broken his coccyx and or tore both of his quads in the most hilarious, Royal Rumble ending ever in 2005 with Batista and John Cena. I mean, that if you ever want to laugh, by the way, like go watch Vince McMahon tear both of his quads and try to stand up. It is one of the funniest things you'll ever see. But, outside of that, I mean, you're right. Like, how I view Vince McMahon today is different. I mean, he can't, first of all, as an on-screen character, if we're just talking about the on-screen character, he's almost unwatchable because of his age, and I can't understand what he's saying anymore. He doesn't have that Vince McMahon flair that he did when he was 55, 60 years old. He's in his 70s now. He's truly a senior citizen. I mean, he's a geriatric man. He's deteriorating mentally and physically, as we all do. Death is undefeated, so it's going to be inevitable. Eventually, he obviously will no longer be here. But I don't enjoy the Vince McMahon character right now, even if he were to return. And that's an interesting point. Rather, not a point, but a question to you is: if Vince McMahon tomorrow were to come out on, it's today. Today's Monday. If he were to come out on Monday Night Raw tonight, what do you think the fan reaction would be? Like, if Vince McMahon's music hit and he came out, I mean, do you think the fans would explode? Do you think they'd be angry? Do you think it would depend on what city he's in terms of how quote unquote smart the fans are to what's going on? What do you think the reaction would be if, you heard the No Chance song and he comes out?
It's funny. I saw this meme that, like, they shouldn't even have announced Vince was coming back to the board. They should have just had his music hit at the Royal Rumble and just walk in. But I think there's a part of me that wants to say they would just boom out of the building. But then there's a part of me that says, like, there's kind of like a Pavlov. So it's like Pavlovian.
Pavlovian. Yeah, there you go. Yep.
Pavlovian. kind of reaction to, like, you hear the music and you cheer. It's almost like when you hear the New Day or Goldberg or something, there's something about some music, like theme songs, that people just go ballistic for. And Vince McMahon, I think, is one of those. And even if you were to boo him, are you not just feeding into the already pre-existing character going back 25 years? Like, that's the tough part about this. Because even if you booed him out of the building, he could spin it in his twisted mind. It's like, oh, you see, I'm still super hated. Like, this is good heel heat. Like, blah, 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 blah. Like, unfortunately, in terms of him coming back on screen, there's no way he can't win. And it's messed up. It's really twisted and messed up. But from an on-screen perspective, I don't see a way that Vince could come back and get like a negative reaction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the fans would be too excited and realizing that this is a moment and they're a part of that moment, so the excitement would overtake any of the logic that they should probably boo this dude for coming back. It would just, as you said, kind of a Pavlovian response, kind of like if anyone were to ever hear Roman Reigns' old music. I mean, that was just, I mean, to me, every time I hear it, and it's been a while, I mean, it was just like an instant reaction, reflex, just to boo that music of the big dog music that was, feels like forever ago now. So I would argue that, Vince McMahon would probably get cheered if he were to come out, but he could easily have the fans he can easily turn on the fans and have the fans boo him very quickly. Vince is very smart when he knows how to get under people's skin, and it would be very quick to turn Vince himself if he wanted to, and saying, I'm back, I'm here to take control. You guys thought you got rid of me and you didn't. I mean, imagine them trying to make this into an on-screen storyline. It would be fascinating to watch play out and see how the fans react, and maybe, but I don't see any benefit in that, honestly. What are you going to do? Have a match? Vince can't wrestle, Triple H can't wrestle. There's just nothing to do there. So I don't know if we'll ever see Vince back, at least in the near future, on screen. I do believe at some point in our lifetimes we will see Vince McMahon on Monday Night Raw or on a SmackDown or a pay-per-view. At some point in our lives, it will happen again. Vince, though, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, feels like he is trying to kill his own creation. I look at this as kind of like the 2002 storyline when he brought in the NWO, and if you remember, when he was like sitting there saying that he wants to poison his own product, and he's my creation and I want to kill it. I mean, you remember that psychotic backstage, like that's what I feel like it is. There was a meme with that going around too. So, and he's saying he wants to poison his own product with the NWO, of course. Not, this isn't really applicable here, but that's what I feel like it is. But it's like, well, why would Vince want to do that, though? Like, if I can't run the company, nobody can? I mean, that's kind of childish if that's what Vince is really thinking. I wouldn't imagine that's what he's trying to do. Do you really think that it's, if I can't run this, nobody can kind of mentality for Vince?
I don't think he's actually thinking that, but I think that's what's happening. I think that in his mind, he's probably at home freaking out every night and saying just like, oh my God, like Triple H, obviously, like Paul is running this into the ground. Like, I need to get my hands back on it and make sure that this thing stays the way it was supposed to be. And I think it's just delusion at this point. Like, obviously, I don't think that Vince is there just like, if I can't have it, nobody can. I just think that he still believes that he's the best guy for the job. In his heart of hearts, I believe he thinks that. And it's so weird, but like, given what's happening now with the way Vince is refusing to accept reality, that his time has passed and the product and the company is probably in a much better place with him gone, do you think maybe now we're finally, 15 years later, starting to get some clarity on perhaps why Shane McMahon left the company all those years ago?
There is so much to be told with the Shane McMahon story that we just don't know, and there's just speculation that we have to go on of what the relationship is with Vince and Shane, and of course the debacle that happened with him booking the Royal Rumble last year was like the last straw, and there's been such an on-again, off-again relationship with Shane. But I think when you look into that, there is something to be discovered, something to really dive into with that relationship that's representative of how Vince runs the company. And Shane has never really been fully invested into the company because I don't think he really believes in the way his father ran it. So, I mean, I think we'll see Shane again, but I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I don't. The fact that the culture has improved since he's left tells you a lot of what you need to know of how things were run backstage, and the feeling that everyone walked on eggshells and that everybody, if they screwed up something, would lose their job. I mean, that's not a culture I would want to be a part of, to be honest with you. Like, I would not want to be every day worrying about because Vince is running this company and how he runs it in kind of a militaristic way, or kind of a you screw up, you're gone, pal kind of way that people have felt. I mean, that has been reported from people that have left the company by multiple wrestlers. This is not just speculation. So I would not want to be a part of that. And it also stifles creativity, because if you want to go out on a limb and try something new that may get over, you don't do it because of fear of failure, and you may be pushed down the cart or fired. And I think that's a awful culture to be a part of, and toxic, really. So again, this is just from what I've heard from, like, especially John Moxley when he left and did a podcast on Jericho, or with Jericho. Same with Punk, the infamous CM Punk podcast with Colt Cabana like 8-9 years ago. That one, and others as well. So Braun Strowman, another one. So I would say that Triple H right now is improving not just the creative, but the culture backstage and how things are run versus Vince McMahon.
I mean, and it was an incredibly low bar, right? Like, I mean, the fact of what the WrestleMania main event was last year, like, think about that. Like, in 2022, the main event was Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar in the most predictable outcome of all time. And we're, 3 months out from WrestleMania? And I have no idea what the main event is going to be. Like, I mean, I think it's going to be one of Rock versus Roman, or Cody versus Roman, or both. But if it ended up being Sammy versus Roman, would I be shocked? If it ended up being Seth versus Roman, would I be shocked? No. And I think Stephanie McMahon said that last week, that they want to create an unpredictable product. And look, I don't think just being unpredictable just for the sake of it is a good strategy. Like, it has to make sense. Sometimes predictability is the right course of action. But I think with Vince, it became just so, like, and he would have his swerves, you know, how he loved to swerve the fans and all that. But I think that it just became so predictable, where you saw what he was doing. Like, it was so crazy that for like a 6-month, 8-month stretch, the entire main event was monopolized by Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. And look, I wasn't a fan of Big E's character as a main event guy, but like, they completely just destroyed whatever momentum he had in favor to just pigeonhole Brock into that spot. And I mean, that's just not what, we can't go back to that. And that's what I'm fearful of. And look, this is not me saying that Triple H is doing everything A+ across the board. We came on here last week and said that Raw is borderline unwatchable. But again, maybe the bar was just set so low that it has at least been tangible improvement since Triple H took over.
Yeah, that's the biggest fear among everybody, I think, is, again, outside of people that only care about the shares and the money, is just the typical fan is concerned about creative. And we should be. If Vince McMahon does come back on a creative level, I mean, right now he's already on the board. And if he somehow ends up being able to retake the creative control with some kind of backdoor, backhanded way, then I would be very concerned. I think that's not fair to the fans, who have generally been very happy with Triple H and his new view on how pro wrestling should be, and bringing back, the actual word of wrestling. You can actually say that on air now, which is amazing that you couldn't before. Just things like that. The production, the angles, the believability in storylines, the creative, the promos that feel more organic across the board, that kind of thing. All of that is going to go by the wayside if Vince comes back. You think if people think that Vince is going to come back and be like, yeah, I've seen the light, guys, I'm gonna run this company differently creatively, it's not going to happen. He's 70 some years old. He has already made up his mind on how WWE should present professional wrestling, and it will be regressive. If he's able to retake control creatively, this company, I think, is going to, it's not going to be go out of business, certainly, but I think fans are going to revolt. And I really would love to see how fans would collectively get together to rebel against the Vince McMahon return creatively. I don't know how that would organically come to be, but I do believe that fans would gather together. Maybe there would be chants at every show. Maybe, of course, social media would blow up. I don't know how it would happen, but I would imagine that if Vince comes back creatively, there should be some kind of just collective movement among fans to reject it. I don't know how that would take place or what it would manifest itself to be. Probably just chants at shows, that kind of thing, or just the BS chants, or bring back Triple H chants. Who knows? But how do you think, and maybe that'll be our final kind of question here on this topic, is like, if this were to creatively happen where Vince comes back creatively and Triple H gets bumped back to whatever, how do you think fans across the board would deal with this to reject it? What is our course of action?
It's so tough because it's easy to say, well, just stop watching, right? But then we know that guys like you and me wouldn't. It's not like we would unsubscribe from the WWE Network and all that. I mean, you can't really boo because then you're giving a reaction. The only way that I think that you would really see tangible changes if people don't show up to the live shows, like Monday Night Raw, SmackDown, the live events throughout the weeks. I think that's the only way that you would see tangible difference, because I think that in terms of the media rights deals and people actually watching on television, it's too easy, right? Or paying $15 a month for the network just so you could watch No Way Out from 2004, which is the primary reason why I have the WWE Network. Like, it's just too easy to do that. And I don't think enough people, or even a fraction of people, would actually be like, oh, I'm not watching the product anymore. But I think that in terms of not going to the actual shows and not giving them any gate revenue is the only chance that you would actually see some real change. Because if there's no gate revenue, I know that most of their financials, and I think you've broken this down, is through media deals and selling their content and all that. But if you're doing traveling shows and you're not like breaking even on gate revenue, I think that would be a cause to maybe see some significant change.
Yeah, that's probably the best way, because they could ignore chants. They can post-production kind of like get rid of the chants, manipulate the audio so it doesn't seem like fans are that angry, and they can, take posters away from fans, and they've done that before, and manipulate how fans are reacting on screen. But the best way to send a message is in their own wallets, right? Like exactly what you said. Don't go to the events, don't buy their stuff. But while that is the most effective message that we can send, and the best way that we could reject that Vince McMahon return to creative, the problem is I don't know how many people would actually take that step, because a lot of people are just love WWE so much and love professional wrestling so much that I don't think they would deprive themselves of WWE coming for a Monday Night Raw or a pay-per-view in their city and try to really stick it to the man, and also at the same time punishing themselves by not going to the event. So it would take some real discipline from a lot of people to do this. So that's my concern, is even if this happens, fans will whine and complain, and there'll be some chants, but ultimately it'll be just business as usual after a couple of months, and it really won't affect them from a revenue perspective. So I think that's probably what would happen, because I don't think people would be that level of angry that they would deprive themselves of the product, punishing themselves to send a message to WWE.
Exactly. And I mean, I just, like, it's easy to say, well, just stop watching it. I'm done watching.
Yeah.
Like, it never happens,
Never.
right? Like, it never happens. But, and I can only speak for myself here, but personally, I could tell you that I probably wouldn't spend money going to an event. I wouldn't spend, $150 on a ticket, an extra $100 on food and concessions and all that. Like, if Vince was running it that way, or like if Vince was running it creatively, I wouldn't give them my money that way, is what I meant to say. But in terms of the other ways, which is the lion's share of their revenue, right? Which we saw during the pandemic when there was no traveling and there was no gate revenue. And were they not making arguably more money then than they were now because of the cost that it takes to travel and this and that and transportation and renting buildings and all this? So we know that they make the lion's share of their money from media rights sales and content sales and pay-per-views and the network and all that, that I really don't see a way for them to put a dent in it. And I think the only way to ever get Vince to leave, barring him passing away, which again, I really don't like to say, but barring that, it would literally just have to be like enough public backlash to where he can't be there. But at the same time, short of him committing murder, how much worse could he get in terms of public backlash?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think at this point, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know if he really cares anymore what the public thinks of him. He's already been exposed for his scandal and what he's done. It's been proven that the investigation has concluded, and they have posted the results and how many millions he gave to the staffers that came in to hide the little the extracurricular activities they were doing and all that. That's all been exposed. So I don't really. He's kind of like, well, the cat's out of the bag. I don't really give a damn anymore about that. Like I care about now me and overseeing this sale and then taking back creative in whatever backhanded way if he goes that road. So, I mean, you have any final comments here before we wrap it up here?
I guess all I'm going to say is that I hope to God he is just sticking to his word and coming back to oversee the sale of a company, because I really just think, given everything going on right now, I don't really think that WWE needs Vince trying to strong arm his way back into the head of creative chair.
No, and it's also curious that it's WrestleMania season, and if he tries to take control before WrestleMania, I mean that would be. I don't know what to make of this. I mean, again, this is all speculation from our perspective, but we are reporting on what we're hearing from, like Wall Street Journal. This is not just us imagining this stuff happening. This is very possible that he could be coming back, not just on the board, but also creatively. And I really think that would be a PR disaster, especially from fans' perspective. But we'll follow the story as it continues to evolve. Again, from what I'm hearing, it's going to be months long. It's not just going to be waking up tomorrow and go, okay, the WWE is sold, Vince is off the board, he's officially retired, and now Disney owns WWE. It's going to be a twist and turn adventure, so I think everybody should kind of buckle up. But all right, well, very good. This is going to be it's going to be a fascinating story as we roll into WrestleMania season of how this all plays out. But you guys can also listen to Anthony's latest retro show. This past week, he did the 2005 New Year's Revolution. Is that right?
Yeah, 2005 New Year's Revolution, a great example of long-term storytelling with the unfolding of the Evolution storyline with Batista and Randy Orton and Triple H all involved. Shawn Michaels is the special guest referee that forwarded his program with Edge. And just an overall really good pay-per-view, and the first of its kind in terms of New Year's Revolution, and kind of an example that sometimes you can put in a pay-per-view between Survivor Series and Royal Rumble and not have it be a complete travesty.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I really enjoyed the review, and I really encourage everybody. That's a really good pay-per-view. The mid-2000s, honestly, 2003 to 2006, 2007 had some really good events, and this is one of them. I really wish they would bring back New Year's Revolution, honestly. It's a missed pay-per-view, one that actually saw the Elimination Chamber as part of the show. I mean, this happened in 05 and 06. For New Year's Revolution, and I was there for 06 in person when Edge won, but this is the year before, and still a great pay-per-view. So I'd really, guys, encourage you to check that out. And Anthony, it's been fun. This is going to be a fun story to follow as we move on, and I hope you have a great night.
You too, man. Take it easy.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.